Welcome. If you're gearing up for any competitive exam in India, you're going to want to pay close attention. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most important topics for our country's future, India's absolutely massive mission to become a global player in semiconductors.
So let's just start with a quick question. What do you think is the tiny, kind of hidden brain that's powering pretty much everything around you? Your smartphone, your car, and even our critical national defense systems like the Akish tier? Well, the answer to all of that is the semiconductor chip.
So what exactly are they? In simple terms, semiconductors are the absolute bedrock of all modern electronics. Just think of them as these special materials that can control electricity. Each tiny chip has literally billions of microscopic switches. They're called transistors, and these little guys are what process and store all the information. They are quite literally the brain power in our devices.
All right, so here's our game plan for today. We're going to start with why these chips are so incredibly important. Then we'll get into the details of the India's semiconductor mission itself. After that, we'll look at the real, actual projects that are popping up, see how we're training people for these jobs, and then, at the very end, I'll wrap it all up with the key takeaways you need for your exams.
So let's kick things off with the big picture. Why does this matter so much? Why is it such a huge national priority? Well, it all boils down to what we call the Global Chip Challenge, and trust me, it's about a lot more than just electronics. It's about economic security and national sovereignty.
You see, the situation globally presents both a massive challenge and, for us, a golden opportunity. The challenge? Well, the industry is dangerously concentrated. Just one place, Taiwan, makes over 60% of all the world's chips, and a staggering 90% of the most advanced ones. That creates a huge risk for everybody. But that risk? That's our opportunity. The world is desperate to diversify its supply chains, and India is stepping up to be that secure, reliable, trusted partner everyone is looking for.
And the economic prize we're talking about here is just massive. Just look at these numbers. In 2023, India's semiconductor market was worth around $38 billion. By 2030, that is projected to triple to a whopping $110 billion. Now, for your exams, that growth projection is a super important data point to lock away.
Okay, so faced with this global challenge and seeing this huge opportunity, what's India's big strategic response? Well, it's a master plan called the India Semiconductor Mission, or ISM for short.
And let's be clear, this is an enormous commitment. The government has put aside 76,000 crore rupees for this mission. I mean, that number alone tells you everything you need to know about the scale of this ambition. This isn't just about building a factory or two. This is about creating an entire, self-reliant ecosystem, right from the ground up.
The whole mission is basically built on four key pillars. First, there's the Semiconductor Fab Scheme, which is all about helping build the actual chip manufacturing plants. Second, we've got the Display Fab Scheme for things like our phone screens. Third, there's a scheme for something called compound semiconductors and for OSAD facilities. We'll get to what OSAD means in a second. And finally, number 4, the Design Linked Incentive, or DLI, which is all about boosting our own chip design startups.
Now, for all of you preparing for exams, I've got a little trick to help you remember those four schemes. Just think of the mnemonic SDCD. Some devices can design. See? Semiconductor fabs, display fabs, compound/OSAT, and design. Pretty simple, right?
So I mentioned that term OSAT, and that is a key piece of jargon you absolutely need to know. It stands for Outsourced Semiconductor Assembly and Test. Think of it like this. The big fancy fab makes a giant silicon wafer that's covered in chips. But it's the OSAT facility where that wafer gets sliced up, each tiny little chip gets put into its protective package, and then it's tested like crazy to make sure it works perfectly. It is the critical final step before it gets to the customer.
Okay, so we have the plan, we have the money. But is anything actually happening on the ground? Oh yeah. Let's get into the exciting stuff. How these grand plans are turning into real physical factories, moving from paper to actual production.
The momentum here is absolutely real, and it's picking up speed. I mean, just look at this timeline. Things kick off with Micron's facility getting approved back in June 2023. Then, boom, early 2024, Tata's huge fab and OSAT projects get the green light. And through 2025, you just see this rapid-fire series of agreements being signed and more units being approved. This isn't just a plan anymore. This is a mission in full motion.
And among all these incredible projects, there's one that stands out as truly historic. I'm talking about India's first ever commercial semiconductor fab. It's being built by Tata Electronics, partnering with Taiwan's PSMC,
right there in Dholera, Gujarat. This is a massive, massive leap forward for India's technological self-reliance.
So how big is this new fab, really? Well, its planned capacity is 50,000 WSPM. And you might be asking, what in the world is WSPM? It's another one of those key industry terms you need to know. It stands for wafer starts per month. It's basically the standard way the industry measures how much a fab can produce. And let me tell you, 50,000 is a very, very significant number. We're talking a large-scale, world-class facility here.
Okay, this table right here, this is your exam cheat sheet. Seriously, it summarizes the biggest projects. Notice the key players. You've got Tata, Micron, CG Power. And look at their focus areas. Some are building the fabs for manufacturing, others are focused on OSAT or ATMP for the final finishing stages. And you absolutely have to pay attention to the locations. Dholera and Sanand in Gujarat, Morrigan in Assam, and Bhubaneswar in Odisha. These details are prime material for exam questions.
Now, building these enormous factories is just one part of the puzzle. The other part, and you could argue it's even more critical, is having the brilliant people to actually design the chips and run these incredibly complex facilities. So let's look at how India is powering its semiconductor future with human talent.
And this is the really clever part. India is building a complete 360-degree ecosystem. It's not just about the factories. We're actively supporting design startups through that DLI scheme. We're partnering with hundreds of universities and colleges, forging tie-ups with global leaders like Purdue University, and we are training a massive workforce of engineers ready to power this new industry.
And the results are already starting to show. Get this, over 85,000 engineers are in training right now for the semiconductor sector. More than 60,000 students have already been trained. We have 278 academic institutions that are now equipped with the advanced software needed for chip design, and 22 innovative startups are getting support to design the next generation of made-in-India chips.
All right, we have covered a ton of ground. Now for what might be the most important part of this whole explainer, especially for all you aspirants out there. Let's boil everything we've talked about down into the key takeaways that you absolutely need to know for your exams.
First, let's talk big ideas. The main story you need to remember is this. India is shifting from just being a technology consumer to a technology manufacturing powerhouse. The ultimate goal is Atmanirbhar Bharat, complete self-reliance in this super strategic sector. And the strategy to get there? Build the whole ecosystem: design, fabrication, and packaging. As for key jargon, make sure you remember OSAT and WSPM.
Okay, now for the numbers. Get ready to screenshot this. The total mission outlay, 76,000 crore rupees. But the total investment approved so far is almost double that, around 1.60 lakh crore. In total, 10 major projects have been approved across 6 different states. The key locations you have to remember: Dholera, Sanand, Morrigan, and Bhubaneswar. And finally, that future market size, $110 billion by 2030. These are the golden figures for your revision.
So as we wrap this up, I want to leave you with a big question to think about. As these factories finally come online and the first truly made-in-India chips begin to roll out, how do you think this revolution is going to reshape not just our digital future, but our country's entire strategic position on the world stage?
The vision is clear, and the mission is happening right now, in full swing. It's really best summed up by what Prime Minister Narendra Modi said: "When the chips are down, you can bet on India." A powerful thought to end on. Thanks so much for joining me today.